Welcome to the Art of Extraordinary Confidence Summit. I'm your host, Dr. Aziz, and we are in Module 1, which is all about unshakable self-confidence. And today, I'm honored to have a guest who I think represents core unshakable self-confidence more than anyone else. He's an extraordinary man. His name is Stephenson. And for those of you who don't know him, many of you probably already do, but he was born with a rare bone disorder that stunted his growth, and doctors thought he wasn't going to survive. And it also led to brittle bones, where as a young man, a child, there was frequent fractures and breaking of his bones from the smallest touches and slightest things, which led to a series of challenges that many of us would never have experienced. And despite these challenges, or maybe because of them, he has led an extraordinary life where he's reached millions of people with message of inspiration, of hope, of taking ownership of your life and your confidence and how to create the life that you want, regardless of what life brings you. And he's gone on to teach with and become friends with incredibly influential people like Bill Clinton, Sir Richard Branson, Anthony Robbins, millions of followers. He has a book, which many of you might have read, most recent one called Get Off Your Butt, which is fantastic. And also has created an extraordinary relationship in his life as well with a woman that is amazing. That's an inspiring story as well. So thank you so much for joining us today, Sean.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. I forgot to mention you're a counselor and a therapist as well. So we could go on and on with all the things that you've achieved, and that shows the level of confidence that you've created. So the first place I want to start is a phrase that you like to use is ridding the world of insecurity. So let's start with that. Tell us more about that. Is it really possible to rid ourselves of all insecurity?
Well, so it's a little paradoxical because we all have insecurity. And so to say that we can get rid of it if we all have it seems kind of crazy. But the best analogy I can give you so that it makes sense what I mean by ridding the world of insecurity. You know that we all have cancer cells in our body. But do we all get cancer? No. Only those that activate the cells. We all have insecurity in us. But are we all extremely insecure? No. Only those that activate the insecurity.
Mm.
And so my goal is to rid the activation of insecurity from the planet. And that is very possible. To rid the world of insecurity itself in its deepest form would be to get rid of the human condition, because you are hardwired with fear. You are hardwired with desires to want to seek out the best mate, stay alive, be accepted by the tribe. You're not going to get rid of that anytime soon, but you are going to get rid of the activation of feeling like you're not enough.
Yes, I like that distinction. So let's talk about that. Activating the insecurity and our ability to do that or to choose not to do that. How do we or a lot of people activate that insecurity?
Well, the biggest thing that we do to activate our insecurity is we do a lot of things, but the biggest thing is we compare ourselves to others. And that never ends well. When you compare yourself to others, you're either playing out one spectrum of insecurity or the other. And one spectrum is you pretend like you're better than, and you puff your chest out and you overcompensate. And that's where we hear about arrogance. That's where we hear about somebody being egotistical, intimidating, narcissistic. And that comes from insecurity. And that is playing the game like you are superior to others. And that doesn't end well. The flip side of that is also insecurity, and that is acting less than, pretending as if everybody else is on a pedestal above you and that you are uh, never going to amount to anything, that you're never going to be as smart as others. And instead of being superior in that concept, you're inferior. And when you act from inferiority, then you never speak up because you think your ideas are stupid. You never speak out and say this is not acceptable because you don't want to rock the boat. And that causes just as many problems as being in the other boat. So my mentality is when you compare yourself, you either act like you're better or worse than. It's not going to end well. So what I like to do is I like to compete with my doubts. That's what I say um, is the alternative to comparing. When you compete with your doubts, then it's not about others. It's not about how much money your neighbor has, how many toys the industry leader that you're seeking to be like has accumulated. Instead, you know your own doubt in your own head. What does it say? And then how can you prove that wrong? And then that allows you to access the healthy side to the ego that makes you want to succeed, makes you want to have drive, but without the detrimental side of lashing out at others or curling up in a self pity ball. I think the ego is really strongly misunderstood. Um, According to a lot of different schools of thought, the ego is like the root of all evil. I disagree. I think the ego is like an animal. And if you take care of an animal, it grows strong and big. It can tow you if it's a big enough thing like a horse. You can ride it. You can use it to your advantage. But if you beat it up, if you make it wrong and bad, if you starve it for attention, it becomes a wild animal that's very vicious. And that's when we see a person that is out of control and just so power hungry. So you have to utilize competition with your doubts instead of comparison with others.
That's powerful. There's a lot of really good stuff in there. One thing that's standing out to me is that competing with our doubts, with that voice that says, well, you can't do that. Then it's like, oh, there's a challenge. The gauntlet has been thrown down. Let me see how I can do that, how I can create that. So, and it's removing it from the comparison with, well, am I better than, have I done more than him or her? Have they achieved X and I haven't? So I guess and yet that is so habitual in our minds to notice and compare. So how do you shift that focus away from comparison? Let's say it just happened. I noticed it. Now what do I do to get back out of that into competing with my own doubts?
Well, you have to remind yourself that that's going to get us further from the goal. So when you have the comparison, you go, time out. That's getting us further from the goal. So right now, the Olympics is going on, right? And the countries are coming together around the world to compete. And I watched a little bit of archery yesterday, and I saw a metaphor from it that compares to this, and that is the best archery athletes are the ones that don't look over to see what their competitors are getting because they actually get a lower score. When the archer is disciplined enough to just look at their target, they get a higher score because they are zoning in on what they want as opposed to benchmarking to what others have. And you can end up lowering your potential and limiting yourself by looking at others, or you could end up straining yourself and driving yourself crazy by looking at others because this comparison game goes down to a biological aspect. It's hardwired in us to see who's the strongest chimp in the in the zoo, and we have we have developed so much of our existence from that comparison, and that's all wonderful. But it's also driving people to suicide and anxiety. It's why uh, you know anxiety medicine is on an all-time high. We have a society of comparison. And I always just remind myself, Sean, let's celebrate when you see somebody who has more of what you want. And let's contribute when you see somebody who has less of what you have. And that's another way of intervening is, when you act like you're superior, time out. No, no, no. Let's give back. When you're acting inferior, no, no, no. Time out. Let's give back. And let's be grateful.
Mm. Yeah, man, I love your language there around celebrate and contribute, depending upon what the situation calls for. Those little kind of language catchy phrases are actually super powerful because we remember those and they stick. And that's what we need is right in that moment when it's arising, okay, compete with my doubts, celebrate or contribute.
Yeah, I mean, how could you ever condition the brain to want something if when you see somebody else that has it, you're envious of it? You're conditioning your brain to be upset when you see an image of somebody that has what you want. I always tell people when you are on the beach in the summer and you're in your bathing suit and you see somebody jogging past you that's in great shape, the worst thing you can do is be like, ugh, I can't believe that person strutting their body around. How dare they? They have good genetics, or it must be nice to have the kind of time to be in the gym for that long, or it must be nice to be rich and be able to have a personal trainer. The worst thing you can do when you see somebody that's in great shape is tear them down, because all that's going to do is continue to leave you in a place that is stuck physically, lethargic, overwhelmed, out of shape, or it's going to cause you to be neurotic if you are already in good shape. It doesn't do any good. Compare leads to despair. As cheesy, as cliche as that might sound, that's just what I remind myself. When I'm seeing, in my industry, personal growth, it's so easy to be like, oh, I should be where Tony Robbins is. I should have built up a career that the late Wayne Dyer had. I should have as many followers as Deepak Chopra, or whatever it may be. But that's never driven me.
Hmm.
Not when it's a place of happiness and sanity. When I've talked about insecurity with successful, well, I shouldn't even say successful, driven entrepreneurs, they'll say, I don't want to get rid of my insecurity. It's what's fueling my success. And I'm like, yeah, it's fueling it, but at what cost?
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that there are better sources of fuel. And when you are driven by feeling like there's never enough, you're on the scarcity trail. And you can be rich and famous and have all the accolades, but if you're in scarcity, it'll never feel like you're enough.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not a healthy place to be in. I would rather be driven in a place of happiness and sanity. That's what I tell my executive coaching clients. I say, all I care about at the end of the day is that you are in a place of happiness and sanity. And you need them both in good measure, because you can have sanity and not be happy. And you can be happy and not be sane. I think it takes a good mixture of both. And that is when I think about the opposite of getting stuck in that insecure space, it's in that space of happiness and sanity.
Absolutely. And well, first of all, you said that's what drives me to success is what some of the driven entrepreneurs will say, but that's a really limited definition of success, right? That's like creation of something that makes a lot of money or gets me a certain level of fame, but then strips away all the other aspects of success, like happiness, sanity, relationships, feeling good in our bodies and our lives.
Right. But the reason why it's not as attractive at first blush is because happiness is a little more elusive to the outside world to look at. You can show a 6,000 square foot home. You can show your brand new Bentley. You can show the model you're dating on your arm. When you tell somebody you're happy, it's your word against theirs.
Yeah.
And so that's why the ego is like, no, no, no. We need concrete proof.
Yeah.
We need shallow examples here. And it never ends well. I think you can have all the accolades you want, But if you don't like who you are underneath it all, and you don't have a really good network of people around you that care about your well-being and love who you are, this existence is going to be really turbulent.
Hmm. Yeah. And when you were talking about the comparisons to, people in the personal growth world, it's funny because it, so it reminds me of Tony Robbins and the 6 human needs, right? When I first started out, it was all about trying to get certainty. Can I earn enough to survive? And then can I earn enough to support my family? And then once that's met, it can easily switch from certainty to significance, right? Because now my basic needs are met. I'm not gonna, got my mortgage paid. I'm not gonna go hungry. Then it's like, oh, but look at that person. Look what they did. And look at that person and look what they did. And I find that whenever the motive is significance, to be better than or to prove that I'm enough, yeah, fear goes way up. Everything's high stakes. It's never enough. And that we need to shift out and we need to focus on that. So when you notice that significance trap going on and you want to shift it to something deeper like contribution or what is that better fuel? What really motivates you? What drives you?
Purpose. Uh, you know, I have a group of mentors. I call them my advocate circle. There's about 22 of them. And these are individuals that I have learned so much about health, wealth, and relationships from mind, body, and spirit, maturity, patience, all the core values that allow you to climb the ladder in life. And I've learned from these individuals that when you plug into your purpose, why were you born? That's a question that one of my mentors asked me over and over and over. Why were you born, Sean? And I got annoyed with him because I kept giving him answers and none of them would suffice. Until finally I said, I was born to rid this world of insecurity. And then there was this long pause. And he said he could feel the hairs in the back of his neck standing up. And he said, yes, you were. Because if there was anybody on this planet in a container that we would all listen to about overcoming insecurities, it would be you. And that purpose of ridding the world of insecurity, that gets me out of bed. That pushes me through dark days. That helps me to realize that it's not just about me. My goal isn't to become the number one best speaker on the planet. My goal isn't to become the richest, most powerful therapist. My goal isn't about having the biggest home. No, it's to rid the world of insecurity. It's not even about me. It's about the rest of the human race. And when you make your life about service, when you make your life about something much greater than you, that you hope to make a impression on the fabric of society long after you're gone, then significance is oddly irrelevant because you know that if you made the mark but nobody knew it came from you, it doesn't matter because you made the mark. When you want to be the world's greatest, that ends the day you die. I mean, I look at it as anytime I'm miserable, whether it's in comparison or inferior feelings or superior elements or anything like that, it's because I'm focused on me.
Mm-hmm.
When I feel my best is when I'm thinking about others. How can I support this podcast? How can I help this audience? What can I do to serve my friend? What can I do to make my spouse's life better today? When you're thinking about others, you're free of that significance trap.
You said, well, one of your mentors said, the container that you're in, I mean, everyone's going to listen to that. And there is a powerful gift in that. And to unlock that gift requires a lot of spiritual growth, personal growth. And this, as I was, watched your stuff and was reading your most recent book, what stands out to me is how much you represent the owner versus victim choice. And or you thinking about, is this a gift or is this a burden? And I remember the first time I actually heard you was many, many, many years ago in a David D'Angelo program. And it was just an audio. So I didn't see you, but he described, sort of your situation. I could imagine it. And man, all the stories I had back then about, oh, this is not fair and not me and why don't they want me and stuff. And I just listened to you talk for like 30 minutes and I was like, look, if he is not buying, if he is the owner of his life, what the heck? What is my excuse? And it activated something in me. And so I think you are like this beacon for that. So let's talk more about that, and maybe for those who don't know, let's start with your distinction about a gift or a burden.
So, in every moment, there's enough evidence in your conscious awareness that your life sucks. And in every moment, there's enough awareness in your consciousness that your life is a gift and amazing. And you have the power of interpretation. I at a very young age was challenged to see that I had a choice from my parents. And when I was given the challenge of, is your life, is this disability going to be a gift or a burden? I saw how much I loved my life and realized that there was a higher reason why I had to go through this. Maybe to show others that they can love their life amidst their challenges. And in some ways, my calling was part of my birth. That my container is very much a contributing factor to my mission. There's no way I could make the impact that I'm making around insecurity if I looked like you. And I say that because the average populace would be like, yeah, easy for you to say. You're X amount of tall, you're this, you're that. But when a guy rolls up in a wheelchair with, bent arms and legs and a bowed chest bone and crooked teeth, and he says, look, get over it. We have a life. Let's maximize what we have. Yes, there are things that suck. Why dwell on them? Love your life. Make a difference for others. The way that you're miserable is because you're focused on yourself and what you don't have, don't want, don't like. And when I spew these concepts, the world listens, and that gives me an advantage. And so this idea of that everything in your life is either a burden or a blessing, it's every moment. You have power of interpretation. Humans are control freaks. We are at our nature, because if we feel out of control, we think we're going to die. It's the uncertainty fact that you were mentioning. When in actuality, we only have control over two things: our interpretation, which is what we make something mean in our mind, and our response. That means what the heck we're going to think, say, and do about it. And when something happens that others are like, oh, that's awful, that's terrible, you're probably never going to come back from that, that's them interpreting it in a disempowering way. It's them interpreting it as a limitation or as a block or as an obstacle. And my mentality, and it has been for almost my whole life, is, never focus on what limits you. Never put your energy and invest your time, money, and resources into what isn't going to get you closer to the life you want. And you're going to be given a lot of labels in your life, and predictions are going to be thrown at you. And I say, never believe a prediction that doesn't serve you. And some people have called me delusional. I have been called delusional by professionals and the peanut gallery. They say, Sean, you're not looking at what is. You're 3 feet tall and in a wheelchair. I'm like, I'm very well aware. I'm sane. I know what I have here. But that is a fact. The fact that I'm 3 feet tall is a fact. But am I short? That's an opinion. Am I disabled? That's an opinion. You know, the opinions are usually what make us feel miserable. The facts don't matter. Somebody says, my mom died. Okay, that's a fact. I can't live the rest of my life now. No, that's an opinion. And somebody else could interpret it in a different way.
Mm. And what I love about it is, people see you talk or they read some of your book and they have an experience with you and they feel inspired. I mean, I feel it right now when we're talking. It's just like it's an energy that you embody and you put out in the world. But what really inspires me most is when I put down the book or I close a video of yours and I think about your life after you are done with that talk or after the video. And it's just you and there's no one around and you are embodying that on a day-to-day basis. Because, someone could go on the stage and share their message and then they're like, oh, this sucks and this is not fair and this is hard. These things that I'm doing, oh, why is this? But you have you are always in that practice. And you.
Well, let me correct that for a moment. I certainly fall into the trap of everybody else. The difference is I won't stay there as long.
Yeah.
Because I go back to the tools quicker. Um, but yeah, I certainly have days where I do go into that zone of this sucks, this isn't fair. But I've surrounded myself with people who remind me of my own message so that I am able to get back up. My mentality is you're going to have bad days. You're going to question yourself. I wake up with doubt on my waiting at the side of my bed, just waiting for me to get into that wheelchair and take on my day. And the question is, am I going to beat my doubt today, or is my doubt going to beat me? And my goal is to have a lot of championships under my belt of defeating doubt. That it does exist.
And that's relieving and inspiring too, right? Because I think people hear extraordinary confidence, and whatever their image of that is the elimination of doubt. I approach every situation with 100% certainty, and that's that. And it's that needing that in itself causes so much suffering. And I think what you're saying is that no matter how much you've done and how much you've grown, there is this ongoing relationship that we're going to have with doubt that we
On the bigger things you take on, the new challenges and insecurities that can get activated. I remember a mentor of mine saying, Sean, when you're single and you're getting rejected for a sexual encounter with a woman on a date, that brings up one kind of insecurity. When you're married and you get rejected for a sexual encounter with your spouse, that brings up a whole nother set of insecurities. Same activity, but lights up different parts of the brain. Because one is like, well, I don't know her that well. I mean, I just kind of met her not too long ago. So it's not going to impact me very long. But when it's your mate, somebody that you're monogamous with, somebody that you built a life with, and then there's rejection, that brings up a whole different set of feelings. Same thing with when you don't have money and somebody turns you down, you're like, well, whatever. But when you have money and somebody turns you down, you're like, well, wait a minute, I've accumulated this wealth. How can you be turning me down? And you get a whole new set of challenges when you've achieved something. And then what happens if you lost something that you've achieved? That's a whole new set of feelings. So every time you expand what you're doing, every time you take it to the next level, you get a whole new level of intensity that you've not felt before. So the insecurities never go away. I always say you have to stay one step ahead of them.
It's absolutely true in my experience that you expand and then there's a whole new set of hopefully higher quality problems. And then but they still push our buttons, they still are challenging. There's still stuff we have to work through.
There's a great metaphor I heard once that every time you're doing more, you have a bigger life, more people are counting on you, you expand your planet. And when you expand your planet, there will be more gravity. It'll be harder to move. And you're going to have to build up more strength to move just as far as you did before. Now it's going to take more effort. And so, what most people do, myself included at times, is we will shrink our planet back down so that the gravity is less. And that's what we call self sabotage. We create a certain amount of wealth, certain kind of relationship, health, whatever it may be. And we go, wow, there's a lot of things riding on this now. People have higher expectations of me. And so it's so tempting to want to shrink down that planet and screw things up so then the gravity becomes less. But in that lessening of gravity, you're losing what you worked so hard for.
Yeah, and moving further from your purpose, right? To be bigger and impact the world in the way that you want to. Yeah. You know, one thing that you talk a lot about is changing the way that we see, the way that we talk to ourselves, are basically getting on our own side. And I think that is an extremely important piece of what you've done in your life and teach other people to do, and is absolutely essential because we can buy into whatever stories we heard about why we're not good enough, attractive enough, smart enough. And you there's some core things that people try that don't work, I think. And then they sort of have this kind of cynical attitude towards that, like, oh, all of that stuff. And yet, it's absolutely essential. So I think it's worth talking about it a little more. How do we get on our own side? How do we stop this pattern of berating ourselves and shooting ourselves in the foot before we even start?
Well, we got to start speaking to ourselves the way you would to a really good friend. And it's foreign at first. That's why I like to start in a journal. You know, when you're writing in a journal, it feels like you're writing a letter to somebody. And you are yourself. Then eventually, maybe you start writing on the mirror in your bathroom that no one can see. Um, Another thing that you can do is and I've done this before, you can record yourself on your phone with messages and then play them back as you're getting ready in the morning. You have to start conditioning that brain of yours to be on your side. It's like potty training, um, housebreaking a puppy. You know, when you have a puppy, that puppy wants to defecate and urinate all over the place in the beginning. It doesn't know any better. And you have to pick up the puppy, take it outside, show him the grass. Do it again and again and again until finally that puppy's brain goes, oh, we do these two activities outside. The mind is no different. Whenever you're beating yourself up, if they say, nope, we don't do that here, you take the puppy outside until finally the brain, when it starts to think, you're stupid. And all of a sudden, as you're saying, it goes, time out. Whoa, I don't talk to myself that way. I'm sorry. I'm a little overwhelmed. I'm stressed. That's no need to take it out on you. And it takes consciousness and mindfulness to get to that place. You know, the easiest way to be insecure is to just go on autopilot and just let your feelings run the show. That's how to be crazy, as opposed to having your conscious, mindful intervention in the experience, auditing your thoughts. Most people think that thoughts are completely out of their control. And random thoughts are certainly popping up at times, but the habitual ones are in your control because you've given them a lot of energy. You've given them a lot of attention. You've focused on them. You have to you have to condition yourself to think about the things that you do want, you do have, you do like. And I'll give you a little acronym that I use is the people that are miserable are stuck in the Fed. Their fears, their envies, and their dislikes. What I don't want, what I don't have, what I don't like. People that are truly empowered and taking action and feel like they have a purpose to their life, they're the ones, excuse me, they're the ones that are in the gap. Goals, appreciations, and preferences. What do I do want? What do I do have? What do I do like? And anytime I'm miserable, I'm like, oh man, I'm in the Fed. Where in the Fed am I? Am I focused on what I don't want? Am I focusing on what I don't have? Am I focusing on what I don't like? And I'll be like, oh, yeah, all three. And then I have to switch it out. And that comes from journaling. That comes from hanging around with people that focus on what they do, want, do, have, do, like. You know, when I get together with my friends, we talk about our goals. When I get together with my friends, we talk about things we're appreciative of. We appreciate each other. When I get together with my friends, we talk about the things that we need to focus on that we like to do and how we're going to schedule them into our lives. It's just, you have to make a conscious effort.
Yeah. It's powerful reinforcement too, to be around people that are reminding you in that way. And you mentioned conditioning in there. You also mentioned the discipline in there. There is something to that. It's, we kind of, it's taking ownership, right? It's like, oh, this is on me to work with my mind each day, to have habits or rituals, like you're saying, catching the pattern, interrupting it, all of that doesn't just happen when we're like, well, I hope it's different today, maybe. It's taking ownership, and that's coming from
Yeah,
there.
I have something that I call my When Life Works list. It's on this wall over here. That's why I'm looking at it. And it's a series of 16 action items that I only need to do 4 a day, and I'm pretty unstoppable that day because I believe that the cure to insecurity is self care. When you're doing these self care rituals, your insecurities don't have a chance. You will be your most insecure feeling when you're not on your When Life Works list, when you're on your When Life Sucks list, when you're doing those things that deplete your sense of self worth and sense of self care. So these are simple items on my When Life Works list. Things like hydrating, exercising, meditating, journaling, consistent restful sleep, proper hygiene and grooming, staying organized, having all vegetable meals, reviewing materials about marketing, business, and life, connecting to my advocates, spending time with my spouse, reviewing my goals. I mean, the list goes on. And if I can do 4 of those things a day, you and No Army can make me feel like I'm not enough.
That is really powerful, and I think that inspires me to make my own When Life Works list.
It's the only thing I've seen in the 22 years of being a speaker and 16 years of being a therapist that works consistently every time with everyone. You take an individual, you get them on to self-care rituals, the When Life Works list, you put them in an empowering environment with great friends and uplifting people, they're going to be unstoppable. It's just a matter of time that their brain gets rebooted and conditioned and they will thrive. The problem most people have is they're on their When Life Sucks list and they are in an environment that is completely disempowering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's so much we could go into there. There's one thing that I'm really curious about is, for you in your life right now, what would you say is your biggest confidence edge? Maybe as Les Brown would say, your volcano, the thing that you're moving towards, and also you need to grow and expand your own gravity, your own confidence in order to be achieving and overcoming.
Couple things. So one is I've been toying with doing more stand-up comedy for a long time, and that's my edge because I've been a speaker. I've been the one that inspires. Do I make people laugh? Yes, I have some funny things that I tell in my stories, and I'm witty up on stage, I would say. But to come out and just make you laugh, for 8 to 10 minutes, uh, that's an edge. And that's something that I realized. I was just talking about this with a friend last night, that I need to pursue, because I know that if I put my mind to it, I could relieve a lot of suffering on this planet just strictly through getting people to laugh.
Mm.
So that would be one of them. Another is, I've been kicking it around for a while, and it's going to happen is I'm going to be launching a membership program, like a continuity series, where people who really want to be in an empowered environment, they want me as their captain in their life, rooting them on each week, and potentially even each day with certain elements of the membership program, that people know that this is my go-to when I'm feeling like I'm not enough. I turn to these videos, these courses, these tools, whatever it may be. And I've been a perfectionist about this for way too long, and said, well, I don't know which tool and technology I want to use. And so therefore I made that as an excuse not to launch it. But it's time. I have a big enough following now that I know that even if it's 5% or 1% or half a percent of the people that know of who I am decide they want to be a part of my program that's ongoing every month, um, I think it could be a great value. People pay for their Netflix every month. Why not something that is also developing their self esteem?
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's just fascinating how no matter how much we do, we talked about this, how much we do, how much we've put out there, there's always that edge where it's like, and I think that's a beautiful thing, especially when you're continually leaning into it and facing it and competing with those doubts. Awesome. Well, dude, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been fantastic. I feel like this is just scratching the surface, and I want to encourage everyone to, if you haven't, read Sean's latest book, Get Off Your Butt, and that one's fantastic. And also, we'll keep you posted about anything around the having Sean as a captain in your life and the membership and all that stuff. So thanks again, Sean, for being here.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And I am grateful for what you're doing on this planet.